Late July and early August 2019 brought an unusual tension to the Kashmir Valley. Thousands of additional paramilitary troops were deployed across the region. This sudden build-up created an atmosphere thick with unease and rampant speculation. The annual Amarnath Yatra, a significant Hindu pilgrimage, was abruptly curtailed. Tourists and pilgrims received official advisories urging them to leave Kashmir as soon as possible. They were told this was due to unspecified security threats. Ordinary life felt suspended, waiting for an unknown event to unfold. People sensed something significant was about to happen. In New Delhi, the political corridors buzzed with hushed anticipation. Persistent rumors circulated about an imminent major governmental decision concerning Jammu and Kashmir. Opposition leaders, sensing the gravity of the situation, began to voice their concerns. They demanded clarity from the government about its intentions. However, key figures within the ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, or BJP, remained tight-lipped. They held strategy sessions behind closed doors, revealing little. The element of complete surprise appeared to be a critical component of the impending action. The secrecy kept everyone, including the media and the public, guessing. On the morning of Monday, August 5, 2019, the pieces began to fall into place. Prime Minister Narendra Modi was reported to have visited the president's official residence, Rashtrapati Bhavan, early that day. A crucial meeting of the Union Cabinet was convened shortly thereafter. It was here that the final decision regarding Jammu and Kashmir was presumably formalized. Preparations were swiftly made for a major announcement in the Indian Parliament. The President of India, Ram Nath Kovind, would play a key constitutional role. He was to issue the necessary orders based on the Cabinet's considered advice. The specific constitutional orders, designed to dramatically alter Jammu and Kashmir's status, were meticulously prepared. There was a palpable sense that India stood on the cusp of a truly historic moment. The nation awaited the Home Minister, Amit Shah, who was scheduled to address Parliament later that morning. His statement would unveil the government's comprehensive plan. This plan marked the culmination of a long-held political and ideological ambition for the BJP. Their goal concerned the special status granted to Jammu and Kashmir under the Constitution. British India presented a complex administrative tapestry before 1947. It was divided into two main parts. There were provinces directly ruled by the British administration. Alongside these existed around 565 princely states. These states were governed by native rulers under the indirect suzerainty of the British Crown. The relationship between the Crown and these rulers was governed by the doctrine of paramountcy. This doctrine was often vaguely defined, but effectively asserted British dominance. These princely states varied enormously. They differed in size, population, wealth, and the nature of their governance systems. The British maintained their influence over the princely states through a network of residents and political agents. These officials were stationed in the states. They advised the rulers and subtly guided their administrations. While the states enjoyed nominal autonomy in their internal affairs, British influence was pervasive. The degree of modernization and political development also varied widely among these territories. Some rulers were considered enlightened and progressive, introducing reforms in education and governance. Others remained deeply autocratic, resisting change and maintaining feudal structures. This diversity made a uniform approach to their future difficult. The impending departure of the British from India in 1947 marked a critical juncture for these princely states. The British government announced that paramountcy would lapse with their withdrawal. This meant that the treaties and arrangements between the Crown and the princely states would cease to be valid. The states would, in theory, revert to their pre-colonial status of independence. However, the practical reality was that they faced immense pressure. They had to choose to align with one of the two newly forming dominions, India or Pakistan. Few had the resources or political will to attempt true independence. The sheer number and complexity of these states posed a formidable challenge. There were over 560 such entities. Each possessed its own unique history, ruler, and set of local concerns. This situation was a significant hurdle for the architects of independent India, like Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, and for Pakistan, The potential for fragmentation of the subcontinent was immense. There was also a real risk of widespread conflict if the process of integrating these states was not handled with skill, determination, and sometimes considerable pressure. The future unity of the newly independent nations depended heavily on successfully navigating this intricate issue. The Mountbatten Plan was announced on June 3, 1947. This plan outlined the partition of British India into the independent dominions of India and Pakistan. A crucial aspect of the plan concerned the princely states. It explicitly stated that British paramountcy over these states would lapse on August 15, 1947. Consequently, the states were theoretically free to accede to either India or Pakistan. They could also, in principle, choose to remain independent. However, the path of independence was strongly discouraged by Lord Mountbatten, the last Viceroy of India. He believed it would lead to instability. The primary factors suggested to guide a state's accession were geographical contiguity and the wishes of its people. Lord Mountbatten advised the rulers to make their decisions before the transfer of power on August 15, 1947. He stressed the importance of this time frame to ensure a smooth transition. The Indian Independence Act, passed by the British Parliament in July 1947, formally confirmed the lapse of paramountcy. This act gave legal backing to the choices the princes had to make. The pressure was immense on the rulers to decide quickly and align their territories with one of the new nations. The cases of Junagadh and Hyderabad serve as instructive examples of the complexities involved. Junagadh, a coastal state in Gujarat, had a Muslim Nawab ruling over a predominantly Hindu population. The Nawab decided to accede to Pakistan in September 1947, despite his state having no direct land border with it. India responded firmly to this decision. It viewed the accession as a violation of the principles of contiguity and popular will. An economic blockade and military pressure followed, leading the Nawab to flee. A subsequent plebiscite in February 1948 showed overwhelming support for joining India. Hyderabad, a large and prosperous state in the Deccan, presented an even greater challenge. Its Muslim Nizam, Osman Ali Khan, desired independence for his Hindu-majority state. He also explored the possibility of acceding to Pakistan. He signed a one-year standstill agreement with India while building up his irregular army, the Razakars. This force engaged in atrocities against the local population, particularly those favoring union with India. India, concerned about national security and unity, launched Operation Polo in September 1948. Sardar Patel strongly advocated for this military action. Hyderabad was swiftly integrated into the Indian Union. These events underscored that accession was not always a simple choice. Jammu and Kashmir held a distinct and strategically vital position among the princely states. It was one of the largest, covering a vast and diverse geographical area. The state had a majority Muslim population, but it was ruled by a Hindu Dogra Maharaja, Hari Singh. Its location was of immense strategic importance. It shared borders with the newly forming dominions of India and Pakistan. Furthermore, its northern frontiers touched Afghanistan and China. This geopolitical significance made its future alignment a matter of keen interest and concern for all parties involved in the subcontinent's transition. Maharaja Hari Singh initially displayed a marked reluctance to join either India or Pakistan. He harbored ambitions of maintaining Jammu and Kashmir as an independent entity. He envisioned his kingdom as a Switzerland of the East, a neutral and prosperous nation. To buy time and maintain the status quo, he sought to sign standstill agreements with both India and Pakistan. These agreements were intended to ensure the continuation of essential services, trade and communication links with both dominions. Pakistan agreed to one, but India sought further discussions before committing. The internal political dynamics of Jammu and Kashmir were also complex. Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah was a prominent political figure. He led the popular National Conference Party. This party advocated for significant political reforms and a more democratic system of governance. Their movement often found itself in opposition to the Maharaja's autocratic rule. Sheikh Abdullah, however, maintained secular political leanings. He also shared a close personal rapport with Jawaharlal Nehru, who was to become India's first Prime Minister. This relationship would play a crucial role in the state's eventual accession to India. An important pre-existing legal framework within the state was the State Subject Law of 1927. This law had been enacted by Maharaja Hari Singh himself. Its primary purpose was to protect the rights of the native inhabitants of Jammu and Kashmir. Specifically, it safeguarded their privileges concerning land ownership and employment in government services. This law reflected a desire to preserve the distinct identity of the Kashmiri people. It would later become a significant reference point. Demands for special constitutional provisions for the state often cited this historical precedent for protecting local rights. Section 5, Crisis and Accession, the Path to Indian Union. Following Maharaja Hari Singh's offer of standstill agreements, Pakistan quickly accepted the proposal for Jammu and Kashmir. India, however, adopted a more cautious approach. New Delhi sought further discussions and clarifications before finalizing any such arrangement. Soon after Pakistan's acceptance, reports began to emerge. These reports indicated an economic blockade of Jammu and Kashmir orchestrated from the Pakistani side. Essential supplies like food, salt and fuel were reportedly cut off or severely restricted. This created considerable hardship for the people of the state and put immense pressure on the Maharaja's administration. The situation escalated dramatically in October 1947. Thousands of Pashtun tribesmen from Pakistan's northwest frontier province launched an invasion of Jammu and Kashmir. These raiders were well armed and organized. It was widely believed, and later confirmed, that they received covert support and direction from elements within the Pakistani military and government establishment. The tribal forces advanced rapidly. They engaged in widespread looting, arson and violence. Their swift progress brought them perilously close to Srinagar, the summer capital of Jammu and Kashmir, threatening its fall. Maharaja Hari Singh found himself in a desperate situation. His state forces, though courageous, were outnumbered and ill-equipped to repel the large-scale invasion. With the raiders approaching Srinagar, the collapse of his authority seemed imminent. In this dire crisis, the Maharaja made an urgent appeal to India for military assistance. The Indian government, led by Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru and Deputy Prime Minister Sardar Patel, considered the request. India stipulated that military help could only be provided if Jammu and Kashmir formally acceded to the Indian Union, becoming an integral part of the country. Faced with the imminent threat to his state and people, Maharaja Hari Singh signed the Instrument of Accession on October 26, 1947. By signing this document, he agreed to cede powers over three key areas: defense, foreign affairs and communications to the Dominion of India. This was the standard format for accession used by other princely states. Immediately following the signing, Indian troops were airlifted to Srinagar on October 27. They quickly engaged the tribal invaders, halting their advance and saving Srinagar. Concurrently, Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah was released from prison. He was appointed as the head of an emergency administration to manage the state's affairs. Section 6. Forging a Special Bond. The genesis of Article 370. The instrument of accession signed by Maharaja Hari Singh was, in its form, similar to those executed by hundreds of other princely states that joined India. However, the circumstances surrounding Jammu and Kashmir's accession were uniquely challenging. The accession took place amidst an ongoing invasion and intense political turmoil. This context significantly shaped the subsequent political and constitutional arrangements made for the state. India's leaders were acutely aware of the unusual conditions under which Jammu and Kashmir had become part of the Union. This awareness influenced their approach to its governance. India also made a commitment to the people of Jammu and Kashmir. It pledged that once peace and order were restored, the will of the people regarding the accession would be ascertained. The conflict with the Pakistan-backed invaders continued, leading India to take the Kashmir issue to the United Nations in January 1948. The UN Security Council passed resolutions. These proposed a ceasefire, the withdrawal of forces by both Pakistan and then India, and subsequently a plebiscite to determine the final status of the territory. A ceasefire line, later known as the Line of Control, was established on January 1, 1949. However, the conditions for the plebiscite were never fully met, primarily due to Pakistan's non-withdrawal of its forces. Intense negotiations took place between the Indian leadership, with Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru playing a central role, and Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah, the popular leader of Jammu and Kashmir. There was a shared understanding of the need for a special constitutional provision. This provision would acknowledge Jammu and Kashmir's unique circumstances at the time of its accession. It would also address the political aspirations of its people. These discussions led to the drafting of Article 306A within the Indian Constituent Assembly. This draft article was later renumbered and formally adopted as Article 370 of the Constitution of India. Article 370 was explicitly described in the Constitution as a temporary provision. It granted Jammu and Kashmir a significant degree of autonomy compared to other Indian states. Under this article, the Indian Parliament's power to make laws for Jammu and Kashmir was initially restricted. It could legislate only on matters specified in the Instrument of Accession Defence, Foreign Affairs and Communications, along with ancillary subjects. For the application of other provisions of the Indian Constitution or other union laws to the state, the concurrence of the Jammu and Kashmir state government was required. This created a unique federal relationship. Section 7, Defining Identity, Article 35A, and its ramifications. The framework of Jammu and Kashmir's special status was further elaborated through the Delhi Agreement of 1952. This agreement was reached between Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru of India and Sheikh Mohammed Abdullah, then Prime Minister of Jammu and Kashmir. It aimed to clarify and strengthen the relationship between the state and the Indian Union. The agreement covered various aspects, including the extension of Indian citizenship to state subjects, the application of fundamental rights, and the jurisdiction of the Supreme Court of India. It paved the way for applying more provisions of the Indian Constitution to Jammu and Kashmir, albeit with modifications. A significant outcome stemming from the Delhi Agreement was the subsequent introduction of Article 35A into the Indian Constitution. This article was not added through a constitutional amendment passed by the Indian Parliament, which is the usual procedure. Instead, Article 35A was incorporated via a presidential order issued on May 14, 1954. This order, known as the Constitution, Application to Jammu and Kashmir, Order 1954, was issued by President Rajendra Prasad under the powers conferred by Article 371(d) of the Constitution. This clause allowed the President to extend other constitutional provisions to the state with the concurrence of the state government. Article 35A empowered the Jammu and Kashmir state legislature to define permanent residents of the state. It also allowed the state legislature to confer upon these permanent residents special rights and privileges. These exclusive rights primarily pertain to key areas such as employment under the state government, the acquisition of immovable property within the state, settlement in the state, and access to state-sponsored scholarship schemes and other forms of state aid. The definition of permanent residence was largely based on the pre-existing state subject notification of 1927, issued by Maharaja Hari Singh. This provision effectively barred individuals who were not defined as permanent residents from acquiring property in Jammu and Kashmir or obtaining state government jobs. While the stated intention behind Article 35A was to protect the unique identity and demographic character of Jammu and Kashmir, echoing the concerns that led to the 1927 state subject law, it became a deeply contentious issue over the decades. Critics argued that it fostered a sense of separatism and alienation. They also claimed it hindered economic development and complete integration with the rest of India. Supporters, however, viewed it as essential for preserving Kashmiri culture and rights. Section 8, The Road to Revocation, Political Will and Strategic Execution. The Bharatiya Janata Party had, for many decades, consistently advocated for the abrogation of Article 370. This was a core ideological commitment for the party and its precursors. They viewed the special status granted to Jammu and Kashmir as a historical anomaly. The BJP argued that Article 370 hindered the full and complete integration of the state with the rest of India. They also contended that it fostered a sense of separatism and was an impediment to peace and development in the region. The party's stance was that there should not be two constitutions, two symbols, and two heads in one country. The BJP's General Election Manifesto for 2019 explicitly promised the removal of Article 370 and Article 35A if the party returned to power. After securing a significant parliamentary majority in May 2019, the government, under the leadership of Prime Minister Narendra Modi and Home Minister Amit Shah, began to work towards fulfilling this promise. The planning for this major constitutional and political maneuver was reportedly meticulous and undertaken with great secrecy over several months, possibly even longer. The government aimed for a swift and decisive implementation to preempt widespread opposition or unrest. In the days immediately preceding August 5, 2019, a series of preparatory measures were undertaken in Jammu and Kashmir. These included the significant deployment of additional security forces throughout the valley. An official advisory was issued asking Amarnath Yatra pilgrims and tourists to curtail their stay and leave the region. This advisory cited intelligence inputs about potential terrorist threats. Subsequently, communication networks, including internet services, mobile phone connectivity and landlines, were severely restricted or shut down. Many prominent political leaders in Kashmir, including former chief ministers, were placed under house arrest or preventive detention. On August 5, 2019, Home Minister Amit Shah made a historic announcement in the Rajya Sabha, the upper house of the Indian Parliament. He introduced resolutions to effectively render Article 370 inoperative. This was achieved by using a provision within Article 370 itself, specifically Clause 3. This clause allowed the President of India to declare Article 370 inoperative, provided there was a recommendation from the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir. Since this Constituent Assembly had been dissolved in 1957 after drafting the state's constitution, the Union government took a novel legal interpretation. It argued that the concurrence of the state government could be given by the governor, a central appointee, particularly when the state was under president's rule, as it was at the time. Simultaneously, the Jammu and Kashmir Reorganization Bill 2019 was introduced. This bill proposed the bifurcation of the state of Jammu and Kashmir into two separate union territories, Jammu and Kashmir with a legislature and Ladakh without a legislature. Both measures were passed by Parliament within 2 days. Section 9. A new chapter or an uncertain future, the aftermath and enduring questions. The revocation of Article 370 and the reorganization of Jammu and Kashmir on August 5, 2019 marked a profound shift. It fundamentally altered the state's constitutional relationship with the Indian Union, a relationship that had existed for 7 decades. The central government argued that these changes would usher in a new era. This era would be characterized by enhanced development, lasting peace, and the complete integration of Jammu and Kashmir with the rest of India. Supporters of the move hailed it as a bold, historic, and decisive step. They believed it corrected a historical wrong and would bring progress to the region. However, the decision also ignited considerable controversy and drew criticism from various quarters, both within India and internationally. Concerns were raised regarding the manner in which these changes were implemented. The communication blackout, the large-scale deployment of security forces, and the detention of mainstream political leaders were particularly contentious points. Critics argued that the process undermined democratic norms and federal principles. The Supreme Court of India, in a landmark judgment in December 2023, upheld the constitutional validity of the abrogation of Article 370. The court affirmed that it was always intended as a temporary provision. The political landscape in the newly formed Union territory of Jammu and Kashmir continues to evolve. Assembly elections were held in September-October 2024. These elections saw an alliance of the National Conference and the Indian National Congress win a majority. Omar Abdullah of the National Conference was sworn in as Chief Minister in October 2024. While participating in the political process, many regional leaders, including Abdullah, have maintained their opposition to the 2019 decision. They persistently demand the restoration of full statehood for Jammu and Kashmir, a promise that the central government has also made for a future date. The security situation, though improved by some metrics, remains a concern with sporadic incidents of violence. The long-term consequences of this monumental decision are still unfolding as of May 2025. Enduring questions persist about its impact on local Kashmiri identity, the pace and nature of economic development, and the overall political aspirations of the diverse peoples of Jammu and Kashmir. The move has undeniably reshaped the contours of the complex Kashmir issue. It will undoubtedly continue to be a significant factor in Indian domestic politics, India-Pakistan relations, and the broader geopolitical dynamics of the South Asian region for many years to come. The path ahead remains one that requires careful navigation and a commitment to democratic values.